My name is Avery. I'm 32, the older twin by a handful of minutes. I've spent a lifetime practicing how to fade into the background whenever my brother, Leo, was near. But nothing, not one moment of all those years, could have steeled me for that evening. It was his engagement party. The air was thick with laughter, the clink of glasses trying to mask a truth I was only just beginning to grasp. Then my father stood up, his face glowing with a pride I'd never seen directed at me, and he held up a single, crisp envelope. He called Leo forward. Inside was a deed. Not just any deed, it was for my apartment. The one I'd poured every spare dollar and every ounce of my energy into. The one they'd always said would be mine one day. A roar of applause filled the room. I stood completely still, a cold glass of wine shaking in my hand. And right then I finally got it. In my family, love came with a price tag, and I had just been declared bankrupt. Tonight, the ghost of a twin vanishes for good. Growing up with Leo was like living next to a bonfire. He got the heat and the light, I got the chill and the smoke. If he scraped AB in a class, it was a cause for celebration. When I graduated with honors, it was met with a distracted, "That's lovely, dear," before the conversation swung back to him. The lesson was learned before I was out of elementary school. Leo was the main event. I was the stagehand. By 27, I'd carved out a quiet, manageable life, a decent job in graphic design, a long train ride to and from work, and a fragile, stubborn hope that one day my parents would truly look at me. That's when my mother, over a Sunday roast, offered me my grandmother's old place. "We'll only charge you half the market rent," she said, her voice sweet with what sounded like generosity. I knew it was a test, but I said yes anyway. In my family, even the crumbs of approval were a feast. The first time I turned the key, my heart sank. The floorboards groaned under my weight. The walls were a sickly, faded yellow, and the whole place smelled of dust and decay. The kitchen was a museum of broken promises. It wasn't a home. It was a burden. But I took it. I spent nights with a paint roller until my arms ached. I ripped up the old, musty carpet until my hands were raw. I scrubbed and I scraped, sometimes sleeping on a mattress on the floor because I was too exhausted to make it to a bed. Every splinter, every sore muscle whispered, "Maybe this will be enough for them to see you." And for a little while, I let myself believe it. When you're raised on a diet of neglect, even a morsel of attention feels like a banquet. They called it helping me out. I knew it was a lesson in endurance. For the first time, I felt a sense of steadiness. The walls were still cracked, but inside them, the silence was my own. It was the one place that didn't reverberate with Leo's name. Every paycheck, I put money aside. Paint, a new sink, light fixtures, things my parents never commented on, but that meant the world to me. I came home after long days and traded my fatigue for progress. One Saturday, I rewired the entire living room. The electrician who came to check my work just whistled and said, "You probably just saved this building." I smiled, not from pride, but from a deep, quiet relief. For once, my effort had actually protected something. My parents would drop by occasionally. They'd walk through, nodding as if assessing a renovation project, not a home. "You're really turning this place around," my mom would say, her fingers tracing the new trim. "It'll be so valuable when it's finished." That phrase, "when it's finished," always sat heavy in my gut. I started to wonder if they even heard themselves. Dad called it protecting their asset. Sometimes he'd bring Leo, who'd joke about how he might take the place over when I moved on. I'd force a laugh, because that's what you do. But quietly, I began to save every receipt, every tube of caulk, every light bulb, every bill from a plumber with my name at the top. Then the day came they sat on my second-hand sofa, their faces etched with a manufactured worry I'd come to recognize. "Avery, the bank is talking about foreclosing on our loan," my mom said, her voice soft. "We need 30,000. We could lose this place." My dad leaned forward. "Think of it as an investment in your future. This apartment will be yours someday." Someday. That word had been dangled in front of me my whole life, always just out of reach. but I wanted to believe them. I needed to. I transferred the entire amount from my savings the next day.
My hands shook as I hit the button.
It felt like purchasing affection from a clearance bin. But I told myself it was different this time. For a few weeks, it seemed like it was. They were warmer. My dad even clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You've done well, Avery." Words I'd craved for 3 decades. The next month, everything was quiet. No more talk of debt, no talk of the future. Just silence. But sometimes silence isn't peaceful. It's the sound of a door being locked behind you. I kept every single receipt. I just didn't know I'd need them so soon. 2 weeks later, Leo called me at the office, his voice buzzing with excitement. "Maya and I are engaged. You'll be at the party, won't you?" I smiled into the phone. Of course I would. He was still my brother after all. The night of the party was soft and gilded. Laughter floated through Maya's parents' house. Everyone looked polished and happy. For a moment, watching Leo, I felt a genuine flicker of joy for him. Then my father tapped his glass. The room hushed. My mother stood beside him, her smile bright and perfectly placed. "Helen and I wanted to give Leo something to start his new life with Maya," my father announced. He reached into his inner pocket and pulled out that familiar envelope. The look on Leo's face told me he was in on the secret. A cold dread twisted in my stomach before my mind even caught up. My father handed him the papers. Leo unfolded them, his eyes gleaming. "The deed," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're giving us the apartment." My father nodded, his chest puffed with pride. "It's time, son. You've earned it." The applause was like a physical blow. The sound of it, the clinking glasses, the joyful shouts of "incredible." It all crashed over me. My mother was beaming. Maya's parents were hugging her. And I stood there, frozen, a ghost holding a half-empty glass. My apartment. The one I had saved, paid for, and rebuilt from the studs out. The one I had rescued with $30,000 I no longer had. I tried to draw a breath, but the air was thick with perfume and betrayal. My Aunt Sarah's voice cut through the noise. "Wait, doesn't Avery live there?" The celebration stuttered. Dozens of pairs of eyes turned to me. Curious, pitying, confused. The glittering light from the chandelier caught the unshed tears I was fighting back. My father didn't even blink. "Avery's been staying there for a few years. It's time for her to move on." "We've been more than generous," my mother added, as if I were a troublesome squatter. A hot shame crawled up my neck. I wanted to shriek, to tell them about the rent, the repairs, the money I'd given them. But my voice was trapped, held down by 30 years of conditioned silence. Leo hugged my dad, whispering his thanks. My mom kissed his cheek. The crowd started clapping again, even louder this time. And I just stood there, completely transparent in a room full of people. I slipped out before the cake was cut. No goodbyes, no scene, just the blur of streetlights and the slow, crushing understanding that the family I'd been begging to be part of had just handed my life to my brother. They gave him my home. So, I gave myself my freedom back. They thought my silence meant I was broken. They had no idea it was a skill I had mastered. That night, I drove home in the quiet, and somewhere between the echo of their applause and the salt of my own tears, something inside me broke. Not with a shatter, but with a clean, decisive snap, like a wire finally cut. No radio, no crying, just the hum of the engine and the plan forming in my mind. When I walked through my door, I didn't see my apartment anymore. I saw a crime scene. 5 years of evidence. Paint cans, stacked invoices, receipts, the very sweat I'd worked into the walls. They thought they could just wipe me away, so I decided to show them what erasing really looked like. I called my friend Chloe. "Can I stay with you for a bit?" "Of course. What's going on?" "I'll explain later," I said. "Right now, I need a moving truck." By sunrise, I had a plan. A cold, meticulous, and utterly perfect plan. I started with the appliances. The refrigerator, the stove, the dishwasher. I own them all. I called the company I'd bought them from. I need it all disconnected and removed. Man, that'll leave the kitchen completely bare. That's the idea, I replied. They arrived at 9. The whir of their drills as they unbolted my stove was the sound of liberation. It was the sound of me taking back what was mine. Next, the floors. The beautiful hardwood planks I'd paid for and installed myself. The crew I hired pried them up one by one. Underneath lay the original, stained and pathetic subfloor, exactly as hollow as their promises. By evening, the place was a shell again. Broken, empty, and worthless.
Perfect.
The movers came next. They took my furniture, my books, my tools. I left nothing behind but dust and the memory of what I'd built. Then I wrote a note. I've vacated the premises as requested. The apartment is all yours now. I sealed the keys inside and sent it by courier. The next morning, my phone blew up. Calls, texts, voicemails dripping with fury. You've gutted the place. You're spiteful. We're calling the police. I answered just once. Go ahead, I said calmly. Tell them I took what I paid for. And be sure to tell them about the $30,000 you took from me under false pretenses. Silence. Then I hung up. But I wasn't done. There was one last thing. My old blue Honda Civic was still sitting in their driveway. The title was still in my name. I called a tow truck. Pick it up from this address. Plate number LK20-100. An hour later, the driver sent me a picture. The car was hooked up and ready to go. It was mine again.
My mom called one last time.
You can't just do this to us.
I already did, I said.
You were my teachers. I sold the car a week later. $12,000 went into my bank account. It wasn't about revenge. It was about balance. And for the first time, I felt no guilt for claiming what was rightfully mine. They stole my security. So I took back my future. Revenge doesn't heal the old wounds, but it does clear the space for new foundations. 3 weeks later, my phone rang again. It wasn't a call fueled by anger this time. It was Maya. Can we talk? She asked. We met at a small park downtown. Her eyes were puffy, her smile hesitant. Your parents told me what happened, she began. They said you destroyed the apartment out of jealousy. I stayed quiet. She took a shaky breath. Then I found out the truth. About the money, the work, everything. I can't marry into a family like that, she whispered. Leo called you bitter, but all I see is someone who finally stood up for herself. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt seen. For the first time, someone was looking at me, Avery, not the invisible twin or the backup daughter. A month later, the wedding was canceled. My Aunt Sarah told me my parents were livid, using my name like a swear word. I let them. I was staying in a friend's spare room by then, paying a little rent, feeling no guilt. I filled the space with my own things, with the same hands that had once rebuilt a broken home. But this time, I was building a life for myself. I wake up now, and the mornings feel lighter. The quiet feels like my own. I buy fresh bread from the market. I laugh with friends. I stopped waiting for someone to grant me permission to exist. I just do. Sometimes I get a pang for the family I wish I'd had. But then I remember how it felt to audition for a love that was never unconditional. Now, I don't audition. I choose. I choose quiet mornings. I choose firm lines in the sand. I choose myself. And if anyone calls that selfish, they've never had to learn how to survive on air. I didn't lose a family. I escaped my captors. And now, finally, I am free.